Well, I think, what Einstein once said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I think this is a great opportunity for some teams to reestablish themselves, their culture.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zur 150. Folge vom Cover 2 Podcast. Mein Name ist Luca und bei mir ist Simon.
Moin, moin.
Es ging nochmal smooth durch heute. Jetzt mal im Ernst, 150 Folgen, kleines Jubiläum.
Ja.
Und ja, wir haben uns gedacht, die 150. Also, okay, wir müssen ehrlich sein. Eigentlich haben wir uns nicht gedacht, wir machen... Bitte?
Eigentlich war es Zufall.
Genau, eigentlich war es Zufall, dass es jetzt die 150. wird. Ich hatte ursprünglich geplant, zur 150. Storyline-Draft zu machen. Der wird dann aber entsprechend am Sonntag 151 werden. Ja, ist das zweite ganz, ganz große Highlight dieser Offseason gewesen. Michael Lombardi hat sich bereit erklärt, mit uns ein bisschen zu sprechen über die aktuelle Situation in der NFL, beziehungsweise er hat gesagt, fragt mich, was ihr wollt.
Ja.
Ganz offen. Wie war dein erster Eindruck von der ganzen, also war das vergleichbar mit Wade Phillips? Wie hast du das Ganze aufgenommen?
Vom Zustandekommen her, meinst du jetzt?
Ja, allgemein, also das große Ganze.
Gleich würde ich jetzt nicht sagen. Also es kam mir unterm Strich so vor, also wir haben ihm ja vorher nicht geschickt, was wir ihn fragen, aber es kam mir so unterm Strich vor, als wäre er auf jede Frage perfekt vorbereitet gewesen.
Ja.
Tatsächlich. Was wahrscheinlich einfach mit seiner Tätigkeit kommt, dass er halt einfach von allem Ahnung hat. Ne?
Ja,
Von daher,
und auch Medienprofi ist.
Ja, und auch Medienprofi ist. Von daher, das hat man auf jeden Fall gemerkt. Aber jetzt nicht irgendwie so extrem ausweichende Antworten oder sowas gegeben. Von daher immer ziemlich auf den Punkt gekommen. Ich fand's geil. Also Unterschiede zu Wade Phillips denke ich mal schon einfach, dass so dieser professionelle Aspekt schwierig zu sagen, weil das ist auch bei dem Wade Phillips, auch was Presse angeht, der Fall. Aber hier noch mal ein Stück weiter tatsächlich.
Ja. Ich muss auch sagen, habe ich ziemlich ähnlich wahrgenommen. Für mich persönlich war deutlich weniger nervös, auch einfach, weil sich das Ganze zweimal verschoben hat. Wir haben jetzt quasi 3 Dienstage hintereinander, saßen wir um Punkt 8 gemeinsam im Zoom-Call und haben auf ihn gewartet. Ja, die ersten 2 Male ist ihm halt was dazwischen gekommen, was auch, dann vollkommen okay war. Wie gesagt, er hat sich da auch 3000 Mal für entschuldigt. Und ja, dann ist es zustande gekommen. Wie hat Martin Pfanner so schön, er hat uns zum zweiten Coup dieser Offseason gratuliert. Ja, absoluter Wahnsinn. Also das sind die Momente, wofür, wie gesagt, man den Podcast macht, neben allen anderen tollen Momenten wie Interaktion und so mit den Hörern. Aber
ich meine, der Coup war ja jetzt auch schon quasi in Planung seit Anfang des Jahres.
Ja, gut, das stimmt auch. Also, sogar noch länger. Ich meine, das erste Mal habe ich mit ihm, ich glaube, Herbst letzten Jahres gesprochen.
Okay.
Dann ist das Ganze, genau, war ums Thanksgiving rum. Dann ist das Ganze ja so ein bisschen eingeschlafen, auch weil wir in der Saison waren und, ne, kommen halt Sachen, verliert man sich so ein bisschen aus den Augen. Ja, und dann haben wir es jetzt in der Offseason nochmal aufgegriffen und ja, es hat geklappt. Also, wir kriegen ja dann auch häufig die Frage, wie das zustande kommt. Da kann man eigentlich gar keine definitive Antwort drauf geben, wie man an so Gäste kommt. Das ist meistens, ist es ein Kontakt, dann ist es Zufall, dann ist es Glück, dann ist es einfach Beständigkeit und Dedication, würde ich sagen. Ja, man braucht halt gewisse Umstände, um sowas zu realisieren und das hat jetzt zweimal bei uns sehr gut funktioniert und wir hoffen, dass es in Zukunft auch weiter funktioniert. So. Ich würde sagen, wir sprechen danach nochmal so ein bisschen tiefer, wer sich das noch anhören möchte, über die ganze Sache. Aber jetzt erstmal viel Spaß mit Michael Lombardi und uns beiden und unserem Englisch. Ich würde sagen, ihr folgt uns auf Twitter, Instagram etc. Und wir hören uns auf der anderen Seite. Viel Spaß. Okay, today it's an honor to be joined by Mr. Michael Lombardi, three-time Super Bowl champion. He's the author of the book, The Gridiron Genius, a book, from my opinion, every football fan should read. He has worked for decades in the NFL. He was the GM for the Cleveland Browns and is currently writing for The Athletic. He's a fellow podcaster. He's doing the GM Shuffle with his co-host Adnan Berg. And he also does the Daily Coach email. How are you, Mr. Lombardi?
I'm doing great. Really doing good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. I appreciate it.
Did I forget anything?
No, I think you got it. I appreciate your kind words about my book. I love the fact that people in Germany, which I know has got a huge football following, not soccer football, but American football following, based on the level of interest that was in the when we had the World League. There were 3 teams, I think, in Germany during the World League. So I appreciate you helping my book sell there in Germany.
It's growing. The football over here it's getting bigger and bigger.
I love that. I think that's great.
So today we'll talk a little bit about the unique situation we have right now in the NFL with COVID. And also we like to get some insight how life as a GM is like in the NFL. Starting off, this year will be undoubtedly unique. And in previous episodes, we already talked about all the different factors and challenges coming into play with handling infections, handling the facilities to avoid infections, and handling game days. But what does this pandemic mean for the outcome on the field?
Well, I mean, I think what it's going to mean is, like anything that you do, that you need a great amount of reps to get better at, something that you need to work on continually to improve in. It's going to lower the quality of play, at least in the month of September, because without the off season, football's a game of fundamentals, techniques, and running those fundamentals and techniques in the scheme as the coaches are teaching it. So it's very diverse. And because we haven't had OTA days, we haven't had off-season programs, it's going to take a little bit of time before the techniques, the fundamentals of these teams improve. And it's going to take some time for the conditioning of the players to improve. So I think, we're going to have football. I think the quality of what we're used to seeing may not be there in September. It'll get better as the year wears on. And I think we'll eventually teams will get comfortable. It's been this way quite often since they changed the collective bargaining agreement, but I think it'll be more challenging this year.
All right. And do you think that the lack of fans will have an impact on the play on the field this year?
Yeah, I think, look, the number one advantage in football that the offense has over the defense is the snap count. And when you play in road games, if you go to Seattle or if you go to any dome stadium, Indianapolis, that crowd noise is so loud that the opposing offense can't really hear. So they lose their full advantage. And now we won't have that. Now we won't have that ability to do that because there'll be no fan noise. There'll be no crowd noise in the stadium. So I think we're going to see a game that's probably going to be a little bit more high scoring. The offenses should be more effective. They shouldn't have false starts. They shouldn't have negative plays because they don't have to worry about that crowd noise and focusing on the silent count. Everybody can just run a normal business.
So it might be a huge difference. For example, the Chiefs, I guess they are playing with fans the first 2 games. I think it's around about 20% with fans. So it might be a huge advantage for the Kansas City Chiefs in particular.
Well, the fans will have to spread out. So we still, in our country here, they're going to have that 6-foot rule. So it won't be a lot of people hurdled together in a 70,000 seat stadium. 20,000 people don't make as much noise as the other. But, they'll gain some advantage. There's no doubt.
Besides the advantage for the offense due to no fans in the stadiums, what teams are also most impacted, in your opinion, by the opt-outs of several players? We had a few, especially in the early weeks. You have any particular teams you think are impacted negatively?
Well, I do. I think obviously the Patriots losing Chung and losing Hightower affects them tremendously. But I think more than anything, it happened early. Like we're seeing some injuries that are going around the NFL right now, players that are going to miss some time. And when the players that opted out, at least it gave the team some time to be able to plan and work around that decision. Now, a lot of guys that opted out probably weren't going to make the team, but had they made the team, they may not have a significant role. Some teams were probably thinking about how could they, replace the player or whatever. So I think that one thing about being an executive in the league, when something bad happens, if you have enough time to recover from it, you can recover. If you don't have time, that's when there's few options. That's when it becomes problematic.
Okay, and there's also not only a lack of fans this year, but the complete offseason got thrown over. So with all the missing preseason games, missing OTAs and rookie minicamps, what does this mean for those rookies, new coaches, and especially new systems those coaches want to implement this year?
Well, I think the new coaches are going to have a little bit of a challenge, especially in September. It's going to take them some time to get going. I say like Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Cowboys, I think he'll have an advantage because, he's a veteran coach. He's been a head coach before, but some of these other guys who are young, they've never been head coaches. I think it's going to be problematic for them to be able to come back and do that. So, it's going to take some time. It takes time to get your systems in place. It takes time to get your teaching in place. And without really a lot of practices, without an off-season program to do that, that sets you back. The other factor, I think, which is critical is that you don't really have enough time to evaluate the players currently on your team. So that takes a little bit of time as well. So you need to really know you're walking into a new situation. You haven't really studied the players in person. You've seen them on tape, but you haven't studied them in person. So that becomes a problem in terms of trying to figure out what you're doing.
Regarding the situation, especially for the more experienced coaches, what are some things teams can do or maybe already have done by living by a certain culture to prepare for this kind of season? For example, be strict, Bill Belichick mentality, do your job, being especially focused on a certain kind of daily routine or something. Is that the specific advantage those experienced coaches really have?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you could just focus on one day at a time, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Try to take some time to step back, really not get caught up in reading the paper, worrying about how many people have tested positive, where the tests are, what's going on. The only thing you can control is what you can control. And I think good football coaches understand there are so many variables. Good leaders understand that there's variables that you can control. And when you focus on those variables that you can control, then your team's much better. But when you start focusing on variables outside of your control, that's when problems start to happen.
Maybe besides New England Patriots, which is kind of obvious with their culture and the team, what are maybe some teams you think are really good or really well prepared for this kind of season? Are there any teams you think where that won't be any problem?
I do think so. I think, the Saints with an experienced coach like Sean Payton will be ready. They've got an experienced quarterback. Obviously, the Chiefs are going to be ready to go. They're experienced and they know what to do. So, I think anytime you have an experienced coach, Baltimore, experienced coach, a quarterback who was the MVP in the league, that gives you a chance. Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, experienced coach, experienced quarterback, even though Ben missed last season. So I do think that experience matters. The coaching matters. They've done this before. They understand how to get a team ready for the opening game. It's not the first time. And I think they know what it takes to have the pad level, to have the fundamentals ready to play. So I think those are the teams that have the advantage. And I think teams that are having changes at quarterback, changes with coaching staff, or quarterback derbies like Chicago. Yeah, they have a coach who's been in place, but who's their starting? Is it going to be Mitchell Trubisky? Is it going to be Nick Foles? I think it'll be Trubisky, but still there's some uncertainty I think that you've got to look into.
MVP Mitch.
MVP Mitch, yeah, that's right.
You mentioned those variables. What are those, and are coaches able to implement them quickly? Maybe even those those new coaches or those coaches with not that much of an experience right now?
Well, I think the variables that a coach can control in football are basically we can't turn the ball over, right? So we got to protect the football. We've got to limit our mental mistakes. And so how do you limit mental mistakes is you don't have a huge volume of offense, defense, or the kicking game. Because of the time restraints, if you try to install everything that you did last year, and you're trying to do it within a 21-day period when you had all of last year to install it, that variable is going to, you're going to lose that variable and you're going to make mistakes. So you got to be able to have a package that your players can execute. You've got to be able to really stress fundamentals. You can't turn the ball over. You've got to really be good in the red zone in terms of red zone third downs, red zone execution, both offensively and defensively. And those are the things that I think most coaches can control. And just because the time frame is narrow, you still have to work at controlling those areas.
One big coaching hire in the offseason was obviously Joe Judge going to the New York Giants. Quite a few talks about him and his kind of coaching style in the media. He's trying to take over this and maybe say the Bill Belichick way of strict coaching. Do you think this New England Patriots style works on other teams, or is it just too specific?
I think you have to be your own person, right? You can't copy somebody else. I mean, you know, I can't be somebody that I'm not, because at the end of the day, you always revert back to who you are. And I think that Joe's got to find his way. And there's some things that I'm sure that he's been privy to working for Bill Belichick that he wants to implement, but he has to do it in his own style. He has to do it in his own demeanor. And I think that the players really will sense an authenticity to what he's trying to do. If they don't, then I think as leaders, if you're not authentic as a leader, then that becomes a real problem.
A whole other question is what maybe Corona and the whole situation does to the teams in the future. Is this whole situation maybe a chance for teams to define themselves and the culture in a new way and maybe profit in the upcoming years?
Well, I think, you know, what Einstein once said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I think this is a great opportunity for some teams to reestablish themselves, their culture, to reevaluate how they evaluate college talent. Do they need to be on the road? Do they need to be doing the things that they've always done in the past? I think that the virus has really forced all of us to change. I mean, all the travel that we used to do with the airports, now people are working from home. They seem to be as productive, you know, they seem to be able to do as many things from their desk at home as they were from their desk at the office. So I think you constantly have to look for how you can adapt, how you can change, how you can really improve what you're trying to do. And I think this virus has allowed us to do some of that. And especially as a head football coach, where you know that you've got to be able to control those variables. Now, it's really more important that you do it now than more than ever.
You mentioned the draft there, all that is going on in college football right now with teams deciding to play conferences and others don't. How do you see the impact on the draft next year?
Oh, I think the draft next year is going to be filled with a lot of players you know, that since they were going to be, I don't want to say first day picks because the first day is just the first round, but I would say Thursday through Saturday picks. I think you're going to see a lot of those guys. If they have a chance to get picked in rounds 1, 2, or 3, I think they're going to try to come out. I think that the uncertainty in college football is really severe. I think many colleges are going to suffer because we don't have fans in the stands. The relative income that comes from having that, it really affects them. So, you know, losing a year of football is going to be tough on a lot of kids. And I do see them saying, you know what, let me just go into the draft. I think it'll make the draft harder next year. I'm not sure where the draft will be in 2021, but I think it'll be 22, but I think it'll be really good in 21.
And that's one huge problem, I guess. COVID is affecting all over the world. The money problem, which obviously happens in all cases, in all sports and in every businesses around the world. And that's one question we ask ourselves, what the cap is going to be in the next years. Everyone is talking about that. What do you think are the consequences for especially the general managers in the NFL regarding the cap space and all around?
Well, I think the cap will go down. Now it can only go, the lowest it can go is down to 175, which would be basically a $25 million cut. And I think that'll be really hard on some teams. It won't affect the teams as much as it'll affect the free agent crop, because like all things that relate to economics, if the teams don't have cap, then it's hard to spend money. And so because if the market is filled with more than one or two free agents, then the prices always go down. It's just basic economics 101. And I think you'll see that. I think the other people that'll get hurt, like in all economic dilemmas, is the middle class, is the people that are making 5, 6, 7 million that are not affordable and are replaceable. I think you'll start to see them. I think the lower end will always have a place, and the superstars will always have a place. It's that middle class that'll get affected.
Yeah. And I believe we'll have some new TV deals soon.
Right.
What's your take on that? Do you think COVID will have an impact on that? Maybe even a positive one, because more fans are forced to watch at home in 2020, and it won't be easy to predict how the future is going to be like with all that uncertainty.
I think the TV deals are going to be huge. I think there's so many venues that people can watch games on now, that there's so many bidders in the marketplace, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Netflix, whether it's, whatever, it's no longer just three networks dominated. It's not ABC, NBC, or CBS, it's all of them. And so whenever there's more bidders into the pie, and look, the NFL delivers a demographic that is strong. And, and because COVID has affected the recording of shows, it's going to be hard for networks to produce really strong ratings to their advertisers on shows that haven't been recorded yet. So that's been a real issue in Hollywood, is how are they going to make shows with the virus? The state of California has been really impacted hard by COVID. That's where most of the television shows get filmed. So it's challenging to really do any acting and be 6 feet close to somebody for a show with all these rules and regulations that are going on in California. So that just opens up a huge door for the NFL owners to really put their product out there, that they can deliver tremendous ratings. Their ratings are always going to be higher than any show out there on the networks, because they deliver a huge number, and that number means advertisers, and that advertisers spend money. So I agree with you guys. It's going to be a huge NFL deal.
And right now training camps have started, and teams are figuring out the ins and outs on how to handle this stuff. Do you think there are specific measures teams can do right now to prepare to maybe even guarantee a full season, or is that not possible?
I think the teams are doing a tremendous job. I think the league's done a really good job of getting everybody kind of caught up. And then I think that the other factor that they've done a good job of is the testing. They've done a tremendous amount of testing. They've worked their way through. They've got good procedures in place. They're going to have really good procedures on the weekends. Every NFL team will no longer have road games, home games anymore. Even if you're playing at home, you're going to go into a hotel Saturday at 1:00. They're going to quarantine teams, whether they travel or stay home. They're not going to let them see their families. They're going to do the testing. They're going to make sure nobody's playing in a game that has a positive test. So, I really think we can make this work. I just think, to me, it works because there's an incredible connection between the players, safety, and the teams wanting to do the right thing. And when you have that, it really works out.
And yeah, maybe all teams are affected right now because of the situation, but maybe there's one team who is affected maybe in a bigger way. The Las Vegas Raiders have moved obviously to Las Vegas. What is your take on the whole situation in terms of developing a fan base or getting set in a new city in general? Are you concerned for the Las Vegas franchise in general, because it's impacting them obviously?
I think the Raiders have done a great job of taking a market that was there that was really needed, that was available to them, and it's going to be a profitable time. They have this incredible stadium. Unfortunately, fans can't go to that stadium this year, but I think they've handled the move really well. They went over there early. They've got out of Oakland. They've got their team settled there. So, they've got an experienced head coach in John Gruden. They've got an experienced quarterback in Derek Carr. Their challenges are on defense. And so I think that I think that it'll work. I think the Vegas thing, if I were working in Vegas, I think the key is to make sure you have really good players that love football. Because if you don't, then that the temptation of that town is too much, and it could cause some problems. So I think you got to have great character on your team if you want to play there.
Okay. With all these structural changes this year, maybe some will be relevant in the future. Do you think changes we saw this season caused by COVID will be maintained in future seasons? For example, the decrease of preseason games?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think if we go down in preseason games, we'll go up in regular season games. But I do think that, we'll need to see how the product looks in September to really just say we're not going to do 4 preseason games. I do think we should go down to 2 preseason games. More than anything, what's hurt teams isn't the preseason games as much as it's been the work against one another. Those days where teams practice against one another. Those are great days because you can really evaluate the talent. You can see who's competing. You can see what's going on, and you can evaluate your own team really well. So I do think losing those joint workouts really hurt.
Are there any other structural things or maybe processes, especially positive ones, implemented besides the decrease of preseason games, which you think may continue in the following years?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the draft worked out. With teams not being able to work out players in the draft because of COVID, you couldn't bring players in. I think this draft is going to be an interesting study in how the process before worked and what it looks like now. Because if teams had really good success with this draft, then you've got to wonder, like, what are they thinking about? Why shouldn't they change what they're doing? And so I think it's yet to be determined. We'll see.
Do you think the NFL has done a good enough job to make a full season possible? We experience it right now, especially in series like Hard Knocks, for example, the LA teams, daily testings, and moreover, schedule adjustments, virtual meetings in the NFL. Are you optimistic about a complete NFL season this year?
Yeah, I am. I really am. I think the league has done a good job, and more than anything, unlike Major League Baseball here in America, the players and the teams are working together. Like in basketball, they've worked really hard together. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you see this, I think that's how it has to happen. Whereas baseball, they really haven't worked together. So I definitely think that it can happen, but it requires you to work really hard at doing the things together as a partnership, because you can't leave the building and then do whatever you want. You've got to put your team first, and that's the first sign of mental toughness.
Yeah, the responsibility of the players is, from my point of view, the biggest thing. Players have to be conscious of what they are doing and how that will be affecting the whole thing. Is there anything you would have done differently, like, for example, regional bubbles, just in the schedule, or are you completely down with what the NFL has done right now?
I think I'm pretty good. I think they've done a good job. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, nor do I know the science about this disease. I know that, from my experience, social distancing works. So I think that they've done a really good job, and bubbles work. I think we see that from the NBA. So I got to give them credit. I mean, they're doing a good job. They're testing. They're not rushing. I don't think you could have rushed back and put pads on players and had contact, So I think they're doing a really good job.
All right. With you as a guest, we and our listeners have the great opportunity to maybe get a little look behind the curtains of managing a team. Mm-hmm. How much does the average viewer know of what is going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think it's really hard because the people that are reporting on the game they've never been behind the scenes. So, like today, for example, the Daily Coach. I don't know if you had an opportunity to read the Daily Coach today. I wrote a story about Bill Belichick, about the famous "On to Cincinnati," right? And the media took that as being very standoffish, like he didn't want to answer our questions about the Kansas City game. But yet what Belichick was doing was it's a term they use in poker called tilting. And tilting means if you lose a big hand and in front of a lot of people and you get embarrassed, then if you try to change your behavior to win the next hand, then you've lost two hands. That one loss has caused you to lose twice. And so when he went on to Cincinnati, he was trying to not tilt. And so because some of these teams, they've never been behind or with a team, they don't understand how things really work in terms of building a team and what it takes. So, yeah, I think it's very challenging.
I already mentioned Hard Knocks. How reliable are documentaries like these, like Hard Knocks or All or Nothing, in comparison to the reality? Is it a different team we see in those series? Or
a lot of acting,
okay.
Yeah, a lot of acting, a lot of people pretending this is what they do, and so, I think it's, look, it's good for the fans to get close, and it's great to hear. And I watch it. I talk about it on my podcast every week. But in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of what's going on behind the scenes, I think it just gives you just a little peek behind the curtain, not a big one, a little one.
One question we ask ourselves is who really runs the show? How much influence in a NFL franchise do the specific parts have? For example, the owner, we have the owner, general manager, the coaching staff, the players. Is it different in every team, or can you really say there's one guy having not the power, but really runs the show? Is it maybe the owner? What's your take on that?
I think it's all dependent upon the team, right? I think that comes down to it. So maybe in Green Bay, the president, Mark Murphy, runs the team, whereas in San Francisco, really Kyle Shanahan runs the team. There's always one guy that has the ultimate authority to run the organization. Most of the times it's not the coach. Often it's not the general manager. Sometimes it's the business guy. I think you see that. I think the teams that win successfully have clearly defined the roles for the people. John Harbaugh knows his role. Eric DeCosta knows his role. John Schneider knows his role. Pete Carroll knows his role. So I think those are the teams that consistently play well, and they know it. But some teams have too much, have a little bit of a gray area, and in that gray area comes plausible deniability, where people can try to be involved but really not have the final say.
So a more active owner, or can you say that a more active owner, for example, in the daily business is more a curse than a blessing?
I think it depends on to me, the owner really needs to be able to create an environment where there's common sense, right? To me, there's 5 things an owner has to do, right? He's got to create an environment that's common sense, right? He's got to define people's jobs. And then 3, he's got to let people do their jobs. And then he's got to preserve the pride of his franchise, which means he's got to care about the legacy of the team and the people that have come before the current players, and make sure they're honored and thanked for their work and services. And then 5th, more than anything, is he's got to care more than anybody. He's got to care. And those 5 things are really what owners have to do. Jerry Jones, does he do all those 5 things? Not really, because he meddles with the team. He's always talking about the team. The players know they work for Jerry. He cares more than anybody. Yes. Does he use common sense? I think he does. But I think the culture there gets a little muddied because he kind of interferes with it. So those are problems that I think are hard to overcome.
Is Denver maybe a good example for an organization struggling because of a lack of leadership at the very top in the last years?
I think so. I think when you look at Denver, I think you see, John Elway runs everything. Everybody knows he runs everything, and it's hard. It's hard in football to control the game from the GM's chair. The head coach has to be the guy who kind of runs everything. That's really more important than anything. And so I think that's really what matters. And so some of these teams that don't have that really becomes a problem for them.
Mm-hmm. You have worked together with one of the, maybe the greatest head coach ever in New England. How is it, especially working together with such a strong-minded head coach, if I can say so?
Well, I think, he's strong in his beliefs, but he's also one of the best listeners that you could find. He's got ability to listen and then make really good decisions. He doesn't let emotions get involved in his decisions. He is truly a person that always puts ego away from his decision making, so he doesn't really let that control him. And I think that when you look at over the landscape, I mean, I've known him since 1991. He's always been the same. He works tirelessly, whether he's working to get ready for a team that is not very good or whether he's working to get ready for the Super Bowl. His approach is always the same. And I think that lends itself to the players seeing this, and they behave in the same manner, and they hear him, and then they try to adopt what he does. So I think he's been a great role model for me, and I've learned a tremendous amount from him.
Yeah. Yeah, you have worked with many head coaches and big owners like Al Davis and Bill Parcells, for example. Who should, in your opinion, have the final say on big roster decisions like quarterback, for example, in terms of rebuilding and contracts, styling the future? What do you think on that?
Well, I think the owner should really set the culture, right? I think the owner should give the culture, and then I think he should be the general manager and the head coach should enact the culture. But I think the head coach has to be the spokesman of the franchise. I think he's got to lead the franchise. He's got to be the one who's making the decisions, obviously taking input from other people, but I think he's got to lead the franchise and be the guy ultimately in control.
Maybe another point. We saw teams depending more and more on technology, especially with COVID around this year. It seems like the NFL is getting more and more into technical helpers to enhance performances of their players. What's your opinion on new technologies, for example, like virtual reality or those things, or the usage of analytics in order to improve teams?
Well, I think, look, we're in the information business when you're in football. There's a lot of information, and if you don't use technology to help you sort the data, you can really make some mistakes. And I think the more we rely on technology to help us sort, collect, analyze data, we're going to get better. And you can't fight it. I mean, it's just part of it. And if it can help you, but you have to understand what you're trying to get out of it before anything. I think that's really critical. You've got to understand what you want and what you're trying to learn from it. And you have to be open-minded and willing to change, and be adaptive. I think that's where technology, is great, but there are some times where you just have to do the work yourself so you learn it. It's one thing to have a computer say, this is what we should do based on analytics, but there's another, you should do the work yourself. So there's a happy marriage and a happy medium between all.
It's one really important thing to monitor, technologies which can help you perform better. What's your experience on a team point of view? How open are teams for innovations? Are they more conservative and stuck in their own ways, or willing to develop further? Maybe from your personal experience of those teams you were in, is it different? From team to team?
I think each team's different, right? I think each team's different. Depending on the owner, what the owner really wants. But I do think, I think if you're not embracing technology, remember, we are in the information business. We're collecting data on people. And if you don't embrace technology and you're in the information business, you're going to get left behind.
All right. And considering that, how important, you already mentioned the draft and that teams may have to adjust next year, how important is direct contact in terms of scouting of free agents and rookies in comparison to the virtual way and relying just only on stats and analytics?
Well, I think, look, you got to have a balance of the things, but the most important thing in scouting is you've got to understand what you want. You have to understand what you're looking for, what you need, and define every position. Because if you don't scout inside out, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you've got to define what you want first before you can search for what somebody else is looking for. So once you know what you're looking for, then scouting becomes easier, because scouting is about elimination. It's never about finding. It's about elimination. And so when you can eliminate things that you don't want, that helps you find the people that you do want.
Have you ever signed a player you didn't like on tape just because of somebody else wanted to bring him in and he convinced you with his personality, with his work ethic, or things like that?
Oh, you always make mistakes like that. I think that's part of the problem you get into when when you have too many people involved in the decision making. The committee mentality doesn't work, and you're trying to make everybody happy, and you're trying to have some balance, when in reality that doesn't really work very well.
So regarding that, the season hopefully starts and continues well. You are also really hard into the betting game. Because we know you are hugely invested in betting with your radio show on SiriusXM. 2 weeks ago, we had a guest only to discuss this growing topic in the US. Do you have any special strategies you'd like to share with us regarding betting?
Well, I don't bet. I mean, that's the one thing I don't do. I make it clear I don't bet, but what I do is I break down football teams for a living. That's what I've always done. And so, handicapping games for me is just some part of what I've always done as a personnel man in the league. This team's strength versus that team's strength, this team's weaknesses versus that team's weaknesses. So I've always done that in my career. And so what I try to do is break down teams in certain areas, what I believe to be their strength, and so there's a few categories that I look to study, third down, quarterbacking, all those areas. And then I come up with my power rankings. And once I come up with my power rankings, then I have so many points allotted for each team. And then when a team goes to play another team, for example, like let's say, we're in the playoff game, and Kansas City is getting ready to play San Francisco in the playoffs. And, I break the Kansas City's power rankings are the same as San Francisco. Then I come up with the line. And so once I see what my line is as it relates to the line that the Vegas people have placed, then I can decide what side I should be on. Because if the line's imbalanced based on the way I've graded the teams, then that gives me an advantage. And last year I actually was at 70% doing it that way. So we'll see if I can keep it going.
Yeah, I guess we have to say thank you, because especially in the preseason, we picked up the strategy of looking at head coaches who like to win in the preseason.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
We followed that advice and made a little bit of money.
Good for you. I'm happy you did. That's great, because that's what your job as an analyst is. Essentially, I collect data and I'm an analyst. And when you do those two things, you want people to hopefully, benefit from your analysis.
All right.
Does COVID have an impact on your strategies, or what specific impact do you think COVID has regarding the lines from maybe Las Vegas? Is it just simply the home advantage or the lack of the home advantage you put into consideration there, or is it more?
Well, I've never, when I break down teams, depending on where they play, home or away, I never use 3 points as the reference, right? I think every it's harder to play in New Orleans than it is to play in Oakland.
Yeah.
And it's harder to play in Green Bay than it is to play in Indianapolis or whatever. So every team I give a certain point rating to. I think this year I'll do that as much, because, I'll probably be a little bit lenient on some of that. I think that even if teams are playing away, let's say, a team with a great quarterback is playing away, and say they're going into Jacksonville, which, not that Jacksonville's a loud stadium, but say they were going somewhere where say they're going to Detroit, where it does get loud there, and a great quarterback's going in there. I might not give Detroit any home field advantage, because the snap count doesn't favor them any longer.
What's your picks for this year's Super Bowl?
That's always challenging for me. I've never been right on that, especially this year. I think last year, I think I had Pittsburgh and Philly. I was so bad on that, but I don't know. Look, I think I look at teams and I say, it's really hard to play the Chiefs, right? Nobody really knows how to play the Chiefs yet. It's going to take a certain style to play the Chiefs to beat them. I thought Belichick did that style and had that game plan in the last game, when they played them in the conference championship game. But the Chiefs have gotten better defensively to kind of offset that style. So I would have a hard time thinking somebody knows how to beat the Chiefs to keep them out of there. I like Seattle's team. I do. I think Seattle, if they let Russell Wilson play early in the game, I think that could be really, really a benefit to their whole entire team. So. But when I look at the NFC, I think it's a lot of teams are close. I think the Saints have one more run left in them. I think Seattle, San Francisco, those are two good teams. I'm not sold on anybody from the North because I think that's a watered down division. And I think Dallas has as good a chance as they've ever had this year.
Yep.
But that's an interesting point you mentioned there, that you thought Belichick had the recipe to beat the Chiefs. Now they've overcome it. Same thing last year with the Ravens, who were kind of difficult to figure out from an opponent perspective. Is there a specific time limit teams have to make their own style successful until there's someone who gets it and who can counter that?
No, it really always comes down to personnel, right? So why couldn't you beat the Chiefs with that style anymore? Because their defense got better, right? Mm-hmm. Their defense improved. So, there's a way you got to play the Chiefs. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to beat the Chiefs playing 13-10, and you're not going to beat the Chiefs getting into the 30s. You got to control the pace of the game. And so, Bill Parcells used to say, his former high school coach, Mickey Corcoran, used to tell him all the time, there's a way to win every game. You just got to figure it out. And I think that you can, but the challenge is, more than anything, is how the players set up within the scheme and then breaking that down to understand how you have to do it. It's a little, and you can't do it based on how somebody else has done it. I just finished a book written by Maria Konnikova. It's about poker, and it's called The Biggest Bluff. And she was talking about Eric Seidel and how she was asking him for advice on how to play an opponent. And he said to her, he said, look, I can't tell you how to play him because you're not me. And he's going to play you different than you play me. And it's the same thing with playing NFL teams. You can think this is the way to play a team based on the way somebody else did it, but you may not have the personnel to do what they did. So you have to figure it out based on the best way for you. And I think that's always the challenge.
Maybe one question to conclude. One of the most talked about teams this season, or for maybe the last 20 seasons, the New England Patriots made major changes regarding their quarterback, obviously. And because of that, the whole world maybe thinks, okay, is it the first time in more than 15 years another team than the New England Patriots will win the AFC East, or do you think the Patriots might go out on top this year as well?
I think that the Patriots are still really good. And I think that Cam can be really effective. I think Cam's got great ability. It's going to be a work in progress for them. I think Buffalo, it comes really down to Josh Allen. Can he throw the ball with any consistency? I think that's got to be key. And, I think the door is open, but somebody's got to walk through it. And Belichick plays football in 3 dimensions: offense, defense, and the kicking game. And unless you're good in those 3 dimensions, you're going to have a hard time.
All right. I guess that's it. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Like I said, this was an incredible experience for us. Great insights and tips all around. Please check out Michael Lombardi on The Athletic, on his podcast with Adnan Work, the GM Shuffle. The Athletic, one of the greatest and growing sports website out there. Great source for information for all teams. Podcast also provides great entertainment. I just this morning, when I was in the car, I listened to the latest episode. And I also really like the Sopranos talk.
Great. Did you guys watch The Sopranos?
I've watched it, yes.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But only once.
No.
Well, you should watch it. It's really good. It's set here in the great state of New Jersey. So it's got a lot of, it touches on a lot of things that I've kind of grew up with. So it's interesting. Now, where are you guys where in Germany are you both?
In the West, it's, I don't know. Do you know Cologne, Düsseldorf?
Wasn't there a team in Cologne? There was a team in Cologne, right?
Yes. In Düsseldorf, Rheinfire.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, I was planning on coming to Germany and Austria this past. I was going to come the next May and June, but because of the pandemic, it's kind of I don't know if we're going to be able to do much traveling.
If you know when you are coming, if you are coming, when you are near the west of Germany, please let us know. We'd like to meet you in person as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me. Wish you all the best.
It was, like I said, incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best for you and your family.
And your dog.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So. Ja, das ist wirklich passiert.
Mhm.
Ich hoffe, euch hat die Folge gefallen. Beziehungsweise ist ja noch nicht zu Ende. Simon, wie fandst du das Gespräch jetzt an sich? Also, erstmal muss man sagen, wie du schon, glaube ich, bevor wir jetzt den Einspieler hatten, gesagt hast, top vorbereitet, ohne dass er irgendwas wusste. Ich habe ihm angedeutet, wir werden so ein bisschen über Corona und ein bisschen über GM sprechen.
Ja.
Aber gut, ich meine, das ist auch das, womit er sich im Moment die ganze Zeit beschäftigt. Wie fandst du das Gespräch an sich? Also auch vom Verlauf her, mal davon ab, dass meine Zoom-Kamera zwischendrin ausgefallen ist und du quasi übernehmen musstest für einen kleinen Stint.
Auf einmal war alles durcheinander, so richtig komisch. Nein, Quatsch. Ja, das hat ja geklappt. Ich meine, wir haben uns ja einiges vorgenommen zu fragen. Und
Ja.
als ich dann so in der Vorbereitung dann auch noch mal mehrmals drüber gelesen habe, dachte ich, okay, wow, das ist schon ein bisschen was an Fragen, was wir da tatsächlich haben. Und mal gucken, wann er dann sagen wird, yo,
Jetzt ist Ende.
jetzt ist Ende, ich hab noch Stuff to do. Aber tatsächlich ging das doch relativ schnell, weil er tatsächlich jede Frage beantworten konnte. So, also
Ja, und vor allem, ich glaube, die Art und Weise, wie er die Fragen beantwortet hat.
ja, auf den
Also,
Punkt gebracht halt.
er hat teilweise Nachfragen, die wir hier stehen hatten, die wir uns Ewigkeiten überlegt haben, hat er quasi schon in den ersten Sätzen, beziehungsweise dann im Verlauf seiner Antwort immer schon untergebracht.
Das ist voll stressig.
Du springst halt die ganze Zeit hin und her.
Nein, also ich brauche so Leute, die alles immer direkt auf den Punkt bringen, ne? Kann ich gar nicht leiden. Nein. Aber so war es tatsächlich und deswegen auch ziemlich spannend und kondensiert ziemlich viel Information, die er so rübergebracht hat. Von daher war es sehr geil und auch ja recht, also ziemlich einfach. Ich meine, wir konnten uns in unser in Anführungsstrichen Skript beziehungsweise unsere Fragen und unsere Struktur des Interviews ziemlich gut halten. Waren jetzt keine großen Sprünge notwendig, konnten am Ende sogar noch ein bisschen Freestyle-technisch ein paar andere Fragen in den Raum werfen. Von daher war es geil. Er hat direkt angesetzt, worum es ging. Ja, also in Anführungsstrichen, also wie kann man dazu sagen, zu unserer Zufriedenheit, also entsprechend umfangreich beantwortet.
Ja.
Auf den Punkt gebracht, einfach, was mit Sicherheit auch ein ganz guter Punkt ist. Und hat einfach Spaß gemacht, kam ziemlich cool, ziemlich lässig, locker rüber und war einfach ein cooles Gespräch.
Ja. Ich muss auch tatsächlich sagen, dass ich mich bei dem Gespräch mehr, dadurch, dass es halt dann irgendwann so war, dass viele Nachfragen einfach schon beantwortet wurden, konnte ich mich viel mehr auf das Gespräch an sich konzentrieren, anstatt auf die Struktur der Folge etc. Das hat mir bei dem Gespräch zum Beispiel nochmal viel mehr so persönlich, sage ich jetzt mal, gegeben.
Mhm.
Bei Wade war klar, da kam auch nochmal die Nervosität nochmal im großen Umfang hinzu. Aber ja, war einfach absolut top, muss ich sagen. Also hat wirklich Spaß gemacht und ja, hoffentlich kriegen wir oder können wir den Streak, wahrscheinlich jetzt nicht in der Saison, aber dann in der nächsten Offseason irgendwie so ein bisschen aufrechterhalten.
Ja.
Gut, was steht jetzt noch an? Also im Großen und Ganzen haben wir nehmen heute an dem Tag, wo diese Folge rauskommt, an dem Sonntag, nehmen wir unseren Storyline-Draft auf.
Mhm.
Der kommt dann wie gewohnt am Dienstag. Und entsprechend danach die Woche am Dienstag unsere richtige, einzige Season Preview mit Martin Pfanner zusammen.
Ja.
Da werden wir auch nochmal wahrscheinlich ein bisschen auf Covid eingehen müssen, so aus Kommentatorsicht und so. Aber das denke ich mal auch ganz spannend von ihm zu hören, was er sich dann da ausgedacht hat für nächstes Jahr,
Mhm.
wie er darauf eingeht etc. Und halt auch mal seine Takes zu hören, wie er nach dieser Offseason bestimmte Teams sieht etc. Also wir werden uns, denke ich mal, so ein bisschen auch an unseren Previews orientieren, unserer Tabelle.
Mhm.
Und dann geht's los. In der Woche sind dann auch oder an dem wenn Dienstag die Folge kommt, ist an dem Donnerstag, glaube ich, das Eröffnungsspiel,
Jetzt
oder?
machen wir.
Oder eine Woche später.
Also nächsten Dienstag Storyline-Draft. Danach die Woche Dienstag ist der 8. Und dann ist das der Donnerstag, das erste Game ist?
Ja, ist es. Weil am 15. spielt Denver gegen Tennessee, laut meinem Kalender. Also spielt am 8. Kansas City gegen Houston. Ja, Zeiten und so.
Mhm. Egal.
Ja, dann werden wir auch die erste Wette der Woche in der Folge mit Martin unterbringen. Ich meine, wir haben ja schon
Jo.
von Andre ersten bekommen. Aber ja, dann, das ist der Start. Und dann, wie üblich, geht es immer am Dienstag weiter mit der gewohnten Herangehensweise für hoffentlich 16 Wochen.
17 Wochen
17, richtig. Plus Playoffs.
plus Playoffs. Andere Playoffs. Also alles anders. Andere Playoffs, das geht ja auch mal so ein bisschen unter. Auch bei mir, das sind ja 14 Teams in Playoffs statt 12.
Ja, mehr Spiele,
Auch dazu.
mehr Spaß. Hoffentlich, wir drücken die Daumen.
Ja, und hoffentlich alles also im Idealfall alles an einem Stück, wenn es ordentlich läuft.
Okay, dann vielen Dank. Also bei den Jubiläumsfolgen bietet sich das nochmal an.
Mhm.
An die Hörer, an alle Gäste, die jemals bei uns zu Gast waren. Und wie gesagt, es macht unglaublich viel Spaß. Wir freuen uns über jede Interaktion. Das schreibe ich auch fast jedem, der, also jetzt nicht selektiert oder so, aber wenn es gerade dann so kommt, dann schreibe ich ihm auch, wie toll ich das finde, dass man mit uns interagiert, mit uns spricht, unsere Meinung wertschätzt und auch unsere Folgen hört. Wie gesagt, das ist schon,
Und das nach
top.
fast 2,5 Jahren. Mittlerweile schon. Also es ist echt crazy. Jedes Mal, man kommt ja irgendwann immer so ein bisschen in Trott rein, Folge nach Folge. Man hat so seinen Plan, seine Struktur, insbesondere in der Offseason. Denken wir uns ja immer genau aus, was wir wie, wann, wo, weil und warum machen wollen. Und dann ist man so im Trott drin und denkt irgendwie nicht so drüber nach, aber so ab und zu guckt man dann schon wieder und sieht so, ja, was, Folge 150 und Leute sind immer noch am Start und hören zu. Von daher fetten Dank an alle, die uns hören da draußen. Es macht jedes Mal Spaß.
Ja. Perfekt gesagt. Wir hören uns dann nächste Woche. Macht's gut und haut rein.
Peace.